you.
And share screen.
Better
That
mute
one.
myself.
Alrighty. It's the whole page, this one, this first little paragraph. Who's going to start reading?
I will.
Good on ya.
Yay.
Okay. Before miracle workers are ready to undertake their function in this world, it is essential that they fully understand the fear of release. Otherwise, they may unwittingly foster the belief that release is imprisonment, a belief that is already very prevalent. This misconception arises in turn from the belief that harm can be limited to the body. That is because of the underlying fear that the mind can hurt itself. None of these errors is meaningful because the miscreations of the mind do not really exist. This recognition is a far better protective device than any form of level confusion because it introduces correction at the level of the error. Oh my goodness me. It is essential to remember that only the mind can create and that correction belongs at the thought level. To amplify an earlier statement, spirit is already perfect and therefore does not require correction. The body does not exist except as a learning device for the mind. This learning device is not subject to errors of its own because it cannot create. It is obvious then that inducing the mind to give up its miscreations is the only application of creative ability that is truly meaningful. Wow. Oh.
That's an awesome paragraph.
Isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Very cool.
Would anyone like to elaborate on it?
I totally get the mind thing. If you can totally believe with your mind, then everything else will follow. It's actually, it becomes quite a simple process. But of course, being human and with the ego and all of that sort of stuff, sometimes your mind wanders from that. So then you have to pull yourself. It's like fishing all the time. You've got to continuously throw that line out and then hook yourself back in again. But it is, I totally believe what it's saying there.
I know I've said this to V before somewhere in our travels, V. I'm sure I've told this story, but let me just tell you this story that I'm going to share on stage this coming weekend. But it was a session that I did. This is an example of how if the mind believes it, the body absolutely automatically follows. And it was quite miraculous. And it isn't, because I was so great at what I did. It was the client's mind that did it. But I had this mother come in to see me and ask me if I could help her brain damaged child. And I was like, I don't know. I've never worked with that, but I'll give it a go. So the girl, who was really 22, she was a woman. She had the mental capacity of a 7-year-old. She was strangulated at birth. She had the umbilical cord wrapped around her neck. She suffered oxygen deprivation and permanent brain damage. And so she could only function as a 7-year-old. And so we did our first couple sessions. I did 2 sessions of trauma release work. And then I went in and we re-imprinted her birth experience. She had vivid recollection of her birth experience. So that's why the trauma work works so well. When we went in to do the re-imprinting process, which is done in a theta or delta state of hypnosis, I had her reimagine her birth experience, where it was like, angels were everywhere. She just flew down the birth canal. It was like this really beautiful birth. And she's sitting in the trance chair, tears rolling down her cheeks because she's just so overwhelmed by the beauty of her reimagined birth. Because the subconscious mind takes vivid sensory specific imagination as reality. This is what happened. So she leaves and I'm like, okay, cool. And I thought that was a great session. She was a great trance subject, and she left. 2 weeks later, I get a call that comes in to my receptionist, and she goes, Gary, you know, Dr. Smith is on the phone and he would like to speak to you. He's Mary's neurologist. I go, okay. So I get on the call, and the only thing the guy says is, what did you do? And I'm like, uh-oh, you know, I don't know. And he goes, I saw Mary 2 weeks ago. She had the functionality of a 7-year-old. I just saw Mary. She just left my office, and I was sitting with a 22-year-old woman, and I have to know what you've done.
Wow.
What did you do? And all I could say was her subconscious mind, literally, because we have a redundancy of 10 to the 11th power of neurological connections inside of us, she rewired based upon her new belief of what really happened, or what happened in her new imagination around her birth. She rewired her brain. And so that's why if you can correct it at that level, the body will naturally follow. Even when it seems absolutely impossible, the body will follow. So that's how powerful this paragraph is, because it is so true. You know, the body really doesn't, it's just a covering, and it is not real. So I just want to share that because it so fits with what this paragraph is.
Absolutely.
Do we want to read it through line by line and break it down, or do you
I
guys
think
feel
this
like
is
you
a big
got it?
one.
Okay,
I'd like to go through it and kind of dig
go
a
for
bit
it.
deeper to get, because I think
There's a lot of
there's
richness there.
more. There's
Yeah.
more gold to be found in their paragraphs.
So-
Before miracle workers are ready to undertake their function in this world, it is essential that they fully understand the fear of release. The fear of release.
Yeah, I've never heard that term in A Course in Miracles before. So that's really interesting to me. So do you think it is a fear of releasing the idea of separation? Or what do you all think is the fear of release? Oh, well, it kind of says in the next sentence.
Well, I'm actually thinking it's you know, when you're talking to people and you know there's a solution, but they're so stuck in their little story that they cannot get out. Is that kind of like a fear of release, a fear of the unknown, the fear of this is how I must be?
That's
I
how I
think
took it, Deep.
that's how I kind of took it too. But then it goes, otherwise they unwittingly foster the belief that release is imprisonment, a belief that is already very prevalent. The misconception arises in turn from the belief that harm can be limited to the body. Oh.
I find that interesting because from the belief that harm can be limited to the body, and yet psychologically we can be damaged as well.
Yeah, that's why it's a
Okay.
misperception.
Yeah.
Looks like, was it a hypochondriac, where if they think they got whatever illness, disease, all of a sudden, poof, they do, or something like that?
They can create it.
Mhm.
Placebo effect.
And is
Yep.
that more about attention, or is it more about if they've got pain of the body, that they've got so used to the pain that they don't want to let it go because it's what they know?
I think it's that separation between the mind and the body that people just,
Well, in all honesty, I want to release my pain and let that stuff go. That'd be great. I mean, I did a meditation with someone not too long ago, and that was the least amount of pain I felt since the disability stuff like set in. And I do my best to go back to that moment as often as possible, because it's been rough for since 2009. is when I technically was put on, the disability lifestyle. And that one meditation, that brief, like maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes tops, I experienced what it was like to essentially be like 6, 7 years old again, where you didn't have that pain. You weren't living in constant agony, and just, it was that wow moment. And, I believe I can get back there. I believe that if I keep working on it, I can train the mind to not recognize the pain that essentially is there from the damage from the surgeries and stuff I've done over the years.
Mm.
Is the pain from the surgeries, Joe, or is it from something else?
A lot of the pain is in my knees, and they went in and ground out arthritis. I'm told I need both knees replaced, and I was told that when I was like 31, 32. The next amount of pain would be my right hip and lower back region, which my lower back I've done some healing on, and it's not bad at all. So I've really been focusing on the hip regions for maybe 6 months now, maybe a little bit longer. And that one's not given up as easily as I had hoped. But yeah, working through things little by little to release as much as possible. There are days where, yeah, I do feel it more, but for the most part, my meditations, my breath work, Reiki, and all that I do is really helping me to live more of a normal life and not be stuck in that cycle of, oh, I hurt, I've got to, sit here and be a lump on the couch. It's not what I want to be. So I do my best to move. And, yoga is a big part of bringing that ability to move. It's funny. I actually started with Kenpo to get my knees to start bending and be able to get down into I think they call it a horse stance. I mean, I can't get all the way into it, but the fun part is it took me 11 years to be able to do a squat, to be able to like sit on my, put my butt to my heels and stand back up. I haven't been able to do that since, before the operations on the knees, and I couldn't do it too well back then. And now I'm doing at least, 2 a day just to keep my body moving. And as I get more comfortable with it, I'm going to add more. And if it starts hurting, obviously I'm going to back off and let healing come into where it needs to come into, so I can continue the progress.
Is it your right or your left knee, or both?
Both.
Because the knees are generally, in body language, it's generally about forgiveness. So it would be for left knees mother, right knees father. So you may want to have a look at that, like what you would need to do around those two personalities in your life to help on the emotional, which is really where the deterioration starts. It starts at the emotional level. It's that vibration of that will show up in the different parts of the body that symbolize. So you may want to look at that and see if there's any work you want to do around forgiveness for both mother and father.
It's funny you say that, because I've been working on that for a few years, and I believe that's why it's lessening. I believe that's why I've been able to get into a squat position. That's why I don't do it every day, but I can get up to 16,000, 20,000 steps in a day now, as opposed to most people that have the deterioration that I'm told by doctors I have. They don't want to walk 1,000 steps in a day. And here I am, doing 16 times. I went to Houston, Texas for robotics, and it hurt. Don't get me wrong. It hurt, but I did 29,800 steps in one day.
That's
that
awesome.
was a lot. It was a lot.
Awesome.
It took a moment to recover, but for me, it was a victory, because how many people do you know can say, I need both knees replaced? But I walked, I think that was almost 15 miles or something like that in a day. Wow.
That's big. That's super big. Yeah, well, good. Just, that meditation that I've given people is, the light comes into the crown chakra, a crystalline light comes into the crown chakra, exits the heart, and then you imagine your mother and your father, and you have 2 beams of light going into each one of them, and you actually create the miracle then, because you start seeing, you continue to imagine that light going into them until you can see their bodies illuminated and their bodies melting away. And all that's left is their soul, which is, of course, the same essence as your soul. So there's this unification that happens during that meditation. I'm sure you're doing that or have done something similar. But if you're not doing that with them, do that with them and see what happens.
Yeah, I'm going to take a quick little note to remind myself to try that one, because I don't think I've heard that one. So thank you.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, it's a
Okay.
really good one.
I'll have a go
Yeah.
with you if you like. Let's get in touch.
Yeah.
I just had a big aha moment too, talking about forgiving families and things, because I still, I feel like I have forgiven my parents for a tough life, but then when I tell my story to people, it's still in, to recognize the hardship that I went through. So it's not a complete forgiveness then. When I get to tell my story of the history and it doesn't become a hardship, it becomes a blessing. And I get to be grateful for what I currently perceive as the hardship. That's when I think the release will occur.
Yeah. Linda, thank you for that comment. That's very true that you put in chat.
It's something that I have on a big thingy that I bought a long time ago, and I carry it in the van with me. And so I see that every single day. And so every single day, and when I'm telling my story, like my story at the moment is not overly positive. So, and when I hear myself saying the words to people, I go, for God's sake, it's not your story. Your story is not about that. Like, switch it around, and it's all going to be good. Money to be paying for the issues I'm having at the moment and what have you. Well, I had a couple of grand turn up in my account this morning from a bank who apparently in 2015, since an investigation, realized that there were fees overpaid. So turned up in my bank account this morning and I'm like, holy shit, just amazes me, when you really think about what you want, that is what you will get.
Yeah, that's so true.
Cool.
Yeah.
Do we need to keep going through this, what do you think? Or
Yeah.
What are we up to then? We did the misperception arises from the belief that harm can be limited to the body. That is because of the underlying fear that the mind can hurt itself.
I love the next line, which is none of these errors is meaningful because the miscreations of the mind do not really exist.
Comes back to asking that question, is this really true?
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Is this my story? No,
Yes.
it's bloody well not.
Why are you trying to make that story true?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
By saying it over and over and over.
What would you rather it be?
Right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Maybe that's why I keep telling myself I'm 18.
I love it.
I tried that and it just hasn't worked.
No, I've got 3 ages, Gary. I mentally I say I'm 18, and then I've got my birth certificate age like 42, and then what the doctors told me with my knees 10 years ago, I just added a few years, so I'm like 105 physically.
Well, I'm sure I'm only 35. I just have this outward covering that looks different. You want to continue, V?
Yeah, where were we?
None of these areas is meaningful because the miscreations of the mind do not really exist.
This recognition is a far better protective device than any form of level confusion. because it introduces correction at the level of the error. Keep going. It is essential to remember that only the mind can create and that correction belongs at the thought level. To amplify an earlier statement, spirit is already perfect and therefore does not require correction. So it's all about the mind. The body does not exist except as a learning device for the mind. Yes, well, we've kind of been discussing that, haven't we? Yeah. This learning device is not subject to error of its own because it cannot create. The body cannot create. It's obvious then that inducing the mind to give up its miscreations is the only application of creative ability that is truly meaningful. It's quite disturbing that you guys are all quiet. You're
Just
muted,
letting
Gary.
it sink in.
Gary, you're muted.
Sorry. I had to blow my nose and hawker a bit, so I didn't want you guys to all hear that. I forgot to unmute myself. Okay, so the body does not exist except as a learning device for the mind. I love that. This learning device is not subject to its own error, the learning device is not subject to errors of its own because it cannot create. And that just takes me right back to all the training that I've done, that really every disease begins first at the thought form level, at the psycho-emotional level, and then over repetition of time and dumping of cortisol and adrenaline, because it's generally always fear-based, we start to create imbalances within the body. Based upon if it's grief, we develop something with the lungs. If it's heartache and heartbreak, something with the heart. If it's anger, it's liver. If it's forgiveness, it's kidneys. And the list just kind of goes on and on. So I think that's a really powerful statement. You want to read the last line, B?
It's obvious then that inducing the mind to give up its miscreations is the only application of creative ability that is truly meaningful. Right.
Well, so I find it very interesting that they would use the word inducing. It's almost like inducing the mind into a state that would give up the miscreations and have like a greater sense of like that connection and oneness. Yeah. So fundamentally, go ahead, Joe.
I was just going to say, all I know is this paragraph just further instills my desire to become a mindset coach, because it's powerful how the mind can create, you know, the good experiences or the bad experiences. And it's, you know, how you choose to view those experiences. And just going through this, it just further instills my desire to just become that mindset coach to help people walk and work through the power of the mind.
Oh, V, do you think that Joe should come train with me?
I don't need another creator to answer that. I sure know it's a yes.
Yeah, you need to come train with me. I'm launching all these trainings this year, Joe, and you should really try to save your pennies and dimes. I'll create a payment program for you. I'll do whatever I need to do. But dude, you're a healer, and you need more arrows in your quiver, buddy.
More tools in my toolbox.
Yep. And I'm just the man to give them to you.
I'd love to work with you, Gary. It's coming. Know it.
Okay. I think you're on our mailing list. I'm pretty sure we put you in the database.
I believe so.
Okay. Yeah, I think so too. Okay.
All right, I'm just going to try and get the next bit. Ah, I've done it again. Oh, there we go. Whew. Trying to get the paragraph 2 under one page.
Oh, you're so smart, V. I think you did
I
it.
don't know. Oh, that might
No,
work.
you did it.
Oh, it's only a small one too. There we go. Cool. Who's reading that one?
Who'd like to read now?
I could run through.
Cool.
Okay.
Magic is the mindless or the miscreative use of mind. Physical medications are forms of spells, but if you are afraid to use the mind to heal, you should not attempt to do so. The very fact that you are afraid makes your mind vulnerable to miscreation. You are therefore likely to misunderstand any healing that might occur, and because egocentricity and fear usually occur together, you may be unable to accept the real source of the healing. Under these conditions, it is safer for you to rely temporarily on physical healing devices because you cannot misperceive them as your own creations. As long as your sense of vulnerability persists, you should not attempt to
Wow,
perform
isn't that the
miracles.
paragraph for you,
And that's
Joe?
basically isn't that basically what I'm doing to myself? Like believing that I can heal these
Yeah.
ailments and doing so. I mean, it's not overnight by any means, but where I was 2 years ago compared to now is a world of difference than where I was, 10, 12 years ago.
Awesome.
Joe, I wanted to share something with you guys. I've been working on prostate cancer for a long time. And there, until last week, there was still a possibility that I had rogue prostate cancer cells in my body, which is not a good thing. I went and spent like $1,000 and got this new test that tests your blood for any antigens towards cancer. They can test for all these different cancers. It's an early detection system. And I've been doing a lot of work on the root cause of the prostate cancer, which goes back to when I was 3 years old, and changing beliefs and releasing trauma and doing all of that. I am totally prostate cancer free right now. The
Nice.
test came back completely negative.
Congratulations.
And so that was really, really powerful for me because I've been working on that for 25 years. I could never get to the root cause of it because I could never figure out what it was or why I had it or where the imbalance was. And then I had this flashback memory to 3 years old, and I got where I had made the decision. And yeah, it was really powerful. And when that shifted, I think my body shifted. So dig in. We can find this stuff and we can heal it.
Yeah.
Just got to be willing and put that fear aside.
Yeah. Yeah. Do we have questions about this last paragraph?
They've come up with magic a couple of times. I'm still trying to work out where that comes from. It needs to. It's got some kind of different definition in this text. Magic is the mindless or the miscreative use of mind. It came up somewhere before, and it's like needing to distinguish between magic and miracle.
I think so. I think I think in this context, magic is, it seems like it's presupposing that magic is deceitful in some way. At least that's how I'm taking it. And it's miscreative use of the mind. Physical medicine are forms of spells, meaning the same thing. It's magic.
And
but it is true. Yeah. If you're afraid to use the mind to heal, you should not attempt to do so. The very fact you are afraid makes your mind vulnerable to miscreations. That's because if you're afraid, you're filled with fear and you're not in the miracle anyways. You're not in that state of oneness.
Do you think that, like, I know with my mum's severe scoliosis, there was someone she needed to forgive back in her very early years, and she didn't, so it never got any better. She'd have moments where, one time I did raindrop treatment on her and she grew 3 centimeters, but she would never hold any kind of healing. We've kind of said it before, but sometimes people don't know who they're going to be if they let go of these things.
Yeah, that was one of the things about release. Remember we were talking about release, fear of release?
Yeah.
Is that we don't know who we become without it.
Yeah, so it's actually very important, I think, that I'm saying here is to actually envision the results once you've shifted. To actually be able to see what the difference will be. Not just be without pain, but to see who you are without that.
Yeah.
That's part of the fear aspect as well. If you're too afraid to heal thyself because of the unknown, that's also going to keep you stuck. If you're okay with jumping into that unknown and literally creating your new world, you essentially will. And that's difficult for a lot of people to wrap their head around unless they get a taste of it. And I mean, in a sense, I've gotten that taste of it, and I'm slowly running face first into those scary, fearful, unknown things, because I've learned the bigger the fear, the greater the reward from moving through it. And don't get me wrong, it's scary. There's times where my heart just stops beating for a minute, like, oh, damn, you're going to do that? And it's like, yeah, let's do this.
That's right, my friend. I did a demo once in this real estate mastermind brokerage of this big company. And I was working with about 40 people, and I muscle tested and came up with this one guy that I thought would be the demo subject for the trauma release process I wanted to demo. And he had to be close to 400 pounds. He was this huge guy. And he came out we're all sitting in a horseshoe, and he came out into the middle of the horseshoe, and I had 2 chairs there, and I sat down in one, he sat down in the other. I said, content free, I want the biggest trauma that ever happened to you. And he had a really big one. He didn't tell me what it was, but it had something to do with being raped. And because I just knew that, and he verified it later. But I did the trauma work on him. He had a big emotional release, and everyone applauded and thought it was awesome because he couldn't get it back anymore, and he felt completely light and free of it. He goes and sits down, and he sits down for it was about an hour before lunch. He sits there in almost a comatose state, I don't know who the hell I am now. And then when lunch came, he came up and said, Gary, I don't know who I am without that pain. I feel like I am a brand new person. I'm not even myself. And yet it's changed my life. I don't want it back, but I don't know who I am without it. And I'm like, yeah. And a lot of people, that I really do think is what they're talking about, the fear of release. We don't know who we are without our pain, our distortions, our mental narratives. We think that's it, but it's not.
Totally agree with that. That's actually a really great story. And that's how I feel with my smoking. I've been smoking since I was 9 years old, and I have been unable to this point to find out what it was that triggered that. So I've just turned 58, so it's a long time to be smoking. But I need to find that, whatever that is, and it's been a long journey, a bit like with you, Joe, your journey to to work through that pain and find out what the root cause is, to be able to stop smoking.
Lungs are always about unresolved grief. So what I would highly recommend to you, Linda, is you go back in time and make a list of all the memories that you have of people that you have grief around. The big ones start with mom and dad. And then do that crystalline light meditation where you bring in the light through the crown chakra. It exits your heart and illuminates their body, and then go see V and have her do some memory resolution stuff with you. Oh, V, I've added something to that process. Now it's a color, a symbol, a sound, a smell, a taste, and one word that represents all of the resources.
Okay.
So when you're getting the resources, you want to get, okay, if all these resources could be a color, what would they be? If it was a symbol, what would it be? You get all that, and at the very end you go, if there was a word that could capture it all, what would the word be? Because you have to give them a language, something active to do as well. And so when they're re-imprinting the trauma, you have them, flood it and do all that with their imagination, but then they're repeating the word inside of themselves as well. It's very powerful.
Yeah, cool.
So just add on something, because I didn't share that with you.
All right.
And I wasn't training that when I trained you.
Yeah, it's always evolving, isn't it?
Always.
Yeah, because you keep learning.
Well, always
That's why
adding
you've got
something.
so many years of decades of experience, and people, I try to explain to people what the training was that you've given me, but it can't be summed up that quickly. And it's like all those decades of experience you've condensed into the trainings that you give, so that we don't have to waste our time getting all traumatized. It's to get the experience. You've already done that, so thanks for that.
You're welcome. I think that's why I was sent here. I really do. I was sent here to do this. That's why I have to train as many people as I possibly can, so that they can carry on the work. And someday I'll croak and I can feel really satisfied that I did what I came here to do, and that's to train as many people as possible. I mean, that's what the Aboriginal law keeper told me. She said, "Oh, you're the one from Atlantis who's come to merge spirituality with science, and you're back to do it again." And I'm like, "Yep, I am." I don't know about the Atlantean thing, but I'm back to merge spirituality and science back together.
Well, if it's true about the Atlantean thing, you're going to be here a long time. So that's good.
As long as I keep my marbles, I'll be okay with that. I just have to keep active and not forget who I am,
I think we all feel that way.
I was just telling Linda about this, my last lesson with my horse, and Catherine, my mentor in all things horsey, she decided it was time that we put a bareback saddle back on Rose. And we used a couple of essential oils, and one of them got her really activated. You could see her pulse was going in her neck. And we put the blanket on her, and she shut down, and I'd never seen her shut down. I'd never recognized that before in a horse, but because I know her so well, I could see her energy went poof, and she was gone. She was just standing there like a zombie, and it was quite incredible. And in order to bring her back so that she could experience this fully and know that she's in a complete place of trust and we're not going to hurt her, we just worked through with the oil, which happened to be cedarwood, and just knowing that taking steps backwards before we go forwards. And by the end of it, was only like maybe 20 minutes. She had her bareback saddle on, and I was walking her around the paddocks, and instead of being all shut down or really panicky, these were the two options. She was doing her usual thing. She tracks like a dog. She puts her nose to the ground, she's smelling. This is what she does when she's activated, and she's just really interested in what's going on. So it was quite powerful. So I think it's also important to know that you can trust the people around you to go through these processes, and to know that you don't have to shut down. You don't have to not do it. You don't have to reduce your experiences, but you can continue on moving through the things that cause the trauma and come out the other side.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And that is the truth. God, we learn so much from horses and dogs and cats.
And cats, yeah.
Yeah.
He's
I
hiding
learned a
over
lot
there at the
about,
moment.
I learned, oh, really?
There.
We have a whole big pond with a big fountain that flows down into it and a Buddha that sits on top of it. And we have these fish in there that was here when we bought the house, and they are the most miraculous things. They all school together and they stay in these tight little balls of about maybe 20 fish, and they go from one end of the pond to the other, and then all of a sudden they'll just meander off all by themselves, and they come back together in this tight little pod again. And Robert and I just watch them when we're doing dishes, which we're doing dishes often, and we're like, just look how beautiful the fish are down there. And they just have this one mind that they move together through the pond, and it's fascinating to watch.
It's like a dance.
It is. And they're smart as anything. They avoid the big cranes, the raccoons, they avoid everything. They know where to hide. It's amazing.
Sounds beautiful.
Yeah, they are.
Love to see your property one day.
Yeah. Take us for a tour.
I love it here. I really do. I love it here.
You were in two minds about it when you first got there, weren't you? But there were a few events that kicked off that made you think, no, this is the place.
Yeah, I mean, we have tons of remodeling to do here, which we haven't done. But even the way it is, I love it. I still love it. So we're good.
Nice. It's home.
I'm grateful I'm the only one on the call that could just take a road trip and come see you in probably 18-hour drive.
There you go.
Take us with you in spirit.
You should do that one day, Joe, and you and Gary can show up on the call together and we can be jealous.
Yeah.
Go through Arkansas on the way to Houston, Texas. So
it's a bit of a detour.
I might have drove by. But we hit a corner of Arkansas, I should say. I think we went diagonally through it. So northeast corner to southwest corner heading into Texas.
Well, there you have it. I've got no idea what that would be. What cities did you go through?
By then I was probably 40 hours a week, so I don't have too much recollection of where we went through, but I could look at a map and be like, yep, we went that way.
Oh, cool. Okay, shall we get back to the course game?
Yes. I think we're on this last little section here. Let me just check if that's beautiful.
That's true.
All right. Paragraph 3. Shall I do that?
Go ahead. I'll read.
Okay.
I have already said that miracles are expressions of miracle-mindedness. Miracle-mindedness means right-mindedness. The right-minded neither exalt nor depreciate the mind of the miracle worker or the miracle receiver. However, as a correction, the miracle need not await the right-mindedness of the receiver. In fact, its purpose is to restore him to his right mind. It is essential, however, that the miracle worker be in his right mind. However briefly, or he will be unable to establish right-mindedness in someone else.
Yep. Makes perfect sense.
Love it.
That is so beautiful. I mean, I have to tell you this funny story because I failed to change a person into right-mindedness. Robert and I were walking on the golf course. There was no golfers. It was 6:30 in the evening, and we're thinking, there's no one on the golf course. We'll just walk down the golf cart trail and go home. And as you walk down this, here's where, like a restaurant and stuff, and people are sitting in the restaurant out in the outdoor patio. And we're walking down by the fountain and down the golf course, and this guy goes, "Hey, what are you doing?" I looked at him and I just sort of turned around, like, I don't respond to people who have that tone of voice. I'm like, yeah, bugger off. And and he throws his chair back and he starts to leap over the fence, over this little like landing thing to come and grab us. And Robert looks at me, and Robert's little. His top of his head comes up to my shoulder. He's like a little guy, and he goes, "Calm down." Just very forceful. Calm down. I'm placing myself in that moment, thinking that really the highest thing to do is actually see the Christ in him. But at that moment, based upon the tone of the voice, the fear in my body, I'm like anywhere but right-mindedness.
Mm.
So for me, I'm sitting here thinking, how could I have done that way differently? Way differently.
Run.
He's gone, boom.
So have you actually been back and seen that guy again?
No.
Or have you chosen not to take that walk anymore?
No, I mean, the people here are fanatical about golf, so I just figure there's golf Nazis all around us, and I just need to be very respectful of their rules, which, the rules didn't make any sense to me. I generally don't follow rules that don't make any sense. No one's on the course, 6:30 at night. Why can't I walk on the golf course to go home down a pathway off to the right? No one's on the green. I don't know what your issue is.
Take a golf trolley with you for the walk. Nobody will question you then.
Then I don't get to walk. So no, I'm just putting myself in that environment where I'm thinking the right-minded thing to do is to be the miracle worker in that moment. Does anyone else have a story like that? I mean, can you imagine you're in a place that you're...
I'm thinking of this this lady I had to approach, becoming the treasurer of the Chamber of Commerce here, and she hadn't paid for a sign, and I had to approach her and say, you've got to pay for this sign, and she's, here's the invoice, and she was just like, oh, we've never had to pay for this before, and I didn't get the invoice, and oh, how can you make me pay for that, and blah blah blah. Anyway, she eventually paid for it, but she sent a check and it went into the mailbox and nobody was checking the mailbox. So I rang her again and she says, I've already paid for that, blah, blah, blah. It's in the mail, and if you haven't, and just accusations flying. And I just said, I'm so sorry. And it shut her right down. She's like, she had nowhere to go because I just apologized. Ho'oponopono. I just said, I'm sorry. And it just completely changed the energy around it.
I know that there's moments for me when I can say to myself, this is a golden opportunity to change a pattern that I've had, to do it in a completely different way and build a new habit of responding in a way that's in alignment with who I'm evolving to be. And I've done that more than I've ever done it before, but it's still a challenge. I guess I'm a pretty fiery fellow, but it's still a challenge for me. Anybody else have a story? Oh, Joe, I'm waiting for you to say I'm a rabid dog sometimes, but you're not taking the bait. I don't understand.
Oh, I mean, I'm trying to think of a story that I can tell all the way through, because I have had an attitude. I've come from a place where my whole life was, fight to survive. Like, you wanted to eat dinner, you wanted to fight for that meal. You wanted to, do whatever. You literally, and most of my life has just been that type of struggle or battle to survive. But over recent years, I've literally flipped that switch and turned it around. And there have been moments, and the one that I'm thinking of was an online situation where I was in a friend's Facebook group, and he posted a meme, something about, being as forgiving as Jesus was, dying on the cross, forgiving the Roman soldier that stabbed him with the blade just to see if he was dead yet, and then still forgave him. And I wrote whatever I wrote, and somebody seen it and responded like, "Wow, that's amazing! You're such a godlike fellow, this, that, and the next." And then he went to my Facebook page and he's like, "Oh, you do Reiki? You're the devil." Like he labeled me as somebody from the Bible, and I looked at Darla. I'm like, I don't know this name from the Bible. Like, who is this person? Darla was trying to figure it out and word it to where I could understand, because I've read some of the Bible. I've not read it, cover to cover yet. I work on it here and there. But she went to go run and get the Bible. I'm like, no, don't worry about it. I'm just going to respond like this. And it was something along the lines of like, I say, I can't even say it word for word now, because it was divinely flowing through me. And it was basically something along the lines of like, I'm sitting here forgiving you for all the hate you're throwing at me, and you're still throwing nothing but judgment at me. And I never heard from the guy again. And for me, that was like a turning point where I was just like, wow, I could have been a total dick. I had like so many different smart ass responses that I normally love to give, but here I was just in that mindset of just forgiving the person. He don't know me. He doesn't know who I do. He obviously doesn't know what Reiki is and how beneficial it is for, mankind, not even just mankind. I mean, Reiki works with any living organism. It's a vibrational healing modality that we all can use. But when you're programmed to believe this one thing and only that, that's where your judgments start, coming into play. And to just turn around and responded like I did, I was kind of just like patting myself on the back, like, you've changed. Good job.
Good. That's powerful, Joe. I have all these things I would have said to him, and it's rolling around in my head right now, but I'll hold it in silence. Don't say it, Gary. Don't say it, Gary.
Like, could have easily happened too.
Very tempting.
I'm always the one I've never shied away from conflict. It's like, bring it on. Bring it on, and I'll give you all my wrath from over the decades, no problem at all. But I have calmed down a lot, like probably on the good side of the 50%. I'd say 75% I've calmed down now. And if there is conflict, depending on what it is, and if I'm needing to defend a loved one, then I will get in boots and all for sure. But I did I had a Facebook comment this morning from a lady. I don't even know who she is. We're not even friends, but I'd put a post on there, and it was really just to get people's opinions and just to, I don't know, something a little bit different. And this woman's come back, and she's made lots of comments, and then in the end she said, it's an internal checkpoint. If this comment challenges you, because she was quite negative about the comment that I put in, the post that I put in there. If this comment challenges you, you are welcome. So I just responded and said, thanks for that. This is a discussion for everyone's opinion. Yours is more than welcome. And when I read it again 10, 15 minutes later, I thought, yeah, good on you, Lou. You've done well.
One of my favorite sayings about opinions, and I'll do the PG version. Opinions are like belly buttons. Everybody has one.
Yeah.
There's another version more around the a-hole. But, I love it. It's so great. Like, opinions are like a-holes. Everybody's got one, and
yeah,
that usually stops people and makes them think for a moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, we shouldn't hang out too much, Joe, because we'd be bad together on the streets.
They'll make me spit water out on this wonderful book before me.
They'll make me tell angry people that they need to go home and take their meds.
Or just look at them and say, you need a hug.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be good, actually. That would be a really, really good intervention.
Yeah. Yeah.
It really would be.
So I try teaching my son. He's got some bullies at school, and I just tell him, send him love. Tell him flat out, you want a hug? Obviously, your parents treat you like crap, so let me offer you a hug. You want a handshake? How about a high five? You know, why you gotta be so mean and rude? Obviously, you're hurt inside. So here, let me give you a hug. My kid's like, no, Dad, ain't doing that.
Yeah, I wouldn't fly. No, we're about at 8 o'clock straight up. So you guys want to you want to share our word for the night? Who's going to go first?
Follow your mind. It's a cop out, really, but anyway, follow your mind.
Oh no, it's good.
I'm gonna go with that one line from the paragraph I read. Magic is the mindless or the miscreative use of the mind.
I'll do mine. You must be in the right mind to turn someone into the right mind.
Nice.
I'm going to keep mine simple. Is it true?
Ending in a question.
Ending always in a question. Okay, gang. I had a lot of fun tonight. I hope you guys did too. It was good.
Yeah, always.
Great
Okay,
being back
so-
in the color, really.
Yes. I've got to go pack for the next 2 hours for a trip. So
Oh,
I'm gonna
yes.
get
Good luck.
Yeah, thank you.
What's the trip?
I'm speaking at a conference in Denver. I haven't spoken on stage to lots of people in a long time.
Yeah.
A really long time. So I've been working on myself, actually, you know. I've been doing my own trauma resolution work. I've been doing my anchoring. I've been doing belief change work and doing all of that. And I feel really calm. But there was a time about maybe a month and a half ago, and you'll find this so weird, B, because I would think about doing it and I get sick to my stomach with fear. I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to do this. And then I thought, this is ridiculous. I mean, I've spoken in front of thousands of people. What is wrong with you? But I think it is this, I only see Robert for the last 2 years. It's like me and Robert, I don't see anyone but on Zoom. I don't go into crowds of people. It's like, it's gonna be a little bit of a shock to my system to go to a conference and have people, you know, like wanting to know me and wanting to like hover around. And I'm like, I feel like I'm a hermit more than I've ever felt like I'm a hermit. And it feels weird to me, I'll tell you. So I'm going to go. I'm going to have a great time. And I've set all kinds of resource anchors. So I'm sure I'm going to be good and call to my higher counsel and do my spirit detachment process and get out there and
You'll be amazing. And you'll
Yeah,
remember
I
it.
will be
So
amazing.
good.
Yeah.
That breath I was telling you last week to do before your meditations. I was going to ask, did you?
I've been doing them.
incorporate that?
Yeah. And it's helped.
help?
It's helped to kind of still the mind before I go in.
Do that breath before you get on stage as well.
I do.
It calms
I
the
will.
Breath is great.
parasympathetic nervous system.
Right. I'll be doing a lot of Ha breathing, which is a Hawaiian method of it. So I'll be doing all that before I go in.
Yeah.
And it'll be fun.
You'll be great. You'll be awesome.
I know. I will. Thank you. God bless you guys.
Okay.
And we'll
Take
see
care.
you on the other side. Bye.
We'll see
Okay.
y'all
Love
soon.
you all. Bye.
Love you too. Bye.